Let me ask you something. What if your life changed, not in 1 year, not in 1 month, but starting today by just 1%? Not a giant leap, not a miracle overnight. Just 1% better than yesterday. Would you take it? Because that small 1% done every single day will separate the average from the unstoppable. Small daily wins are the foundation of every great transformation. Most people wait for a dramatic breakthrough, a big opportunity, a sudden burst of motivation, or a perfect moment to begin. But real growth does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly in the form of small, intentional actions repeated over time. Improving yourself by 1% every day means focusing on manageable progress instead of overwhelming change. It means choosing to read a few pages instead of none, taking a short walk instead of staying still, or replacing one negative thought instead of trying to eliminate all doubt at once. These small actions may not feel powerful in the moment, but their impact multiplies when practiced consistently. The reason small wins are so powerful is because they are sustainable. Grand goals can be intimidating, and intimidation often leads to procrastination. When you tell yourself you must completely transform your body, career, or mindset overnight, your brain resists. But when you say, today, I'll be just 1% better, it feels possible. That sense of possibility builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds identity. Over time, those tiny improvements reshape not just your habits, but your belief in who you are. You begin to see yourself as someone who shows up, someone who grows, someone who doesn't quit after one setback. Small wins also shift your focus from outcomes to processes. Instead of obsessing over results that may take months or years, you concentrate on what you can control today. You cannot control how fast success arrives, but you can control whether you practice your craft, sharpen your skills, or improve your attitude. By focusing on the daily process, you reduce anxiety and increase clarity. Each day becomes a simple question: what is one thing I can do better than yesterday? That question keeps you grounded in action instead of lost in worry. Another powerful aspect of small daily improvement is how it compounds over time. A single drop of water seems insignificant, but consistent drops can carve through stone. Likewise, one small effort may not change your life immediately, but repeated efforts reshape your future. If you improve your communication skills slightly every day, in a year you will speak with clarity and confidence. If you strengthen your discipline a little each day, in a year you will trust yourself in ways you never imagined. The compound effect turns ordinary effort into extraordinary growth. Small wins also train your mind to recognize progress. Many people fail to improve because they overlook what they have already achieved. When you intentionally track your 1% improvements, you begin to see evidence of growth. Evidence fuels belief. Belief fuels persistence. Instead of saying, I'm not where I want to be, you start saying, I'm further than I was. That mindset reduces frustration and increases gratitude. Gratitude keeps you moving forward without bitterness or comparison. You stop competing with others and start competing with yesterday's version of yourself. Finally, small daily wins strengthen resilience. Life will not always cooperate with your plans. There will be days of fatigue, disappointment, and doubt. On those days, aiming for 1% keeps you in the game. You may not have the energy to conquer the world, but you have enough strength to take one small step, and that step matters. It prevents regression. It preserves momentum. It reminds you that growth is not about perfection, but persistence. By honoring the power of small daily wins, you build a life defined not by sudden bursts of effort, but by steady, disciplined progress that continues no matter the circumstances. Motivation is powerful, but it is unreliable. It rises and falls with your emotions, your environment, and your circumstances. Some mornings you wake up energized and ready to conquer the world. Other mornings you wake up tired, distracted, or discouraged. If your growth depends on how you feel, your progress will always be inconsistent. That is why discipline matters more than motivation. Discipline is the decision to act regardless of your mood. It is the commitment to your future self, even when your present self wants comfort. Improving 1% every day requires discipline because not every day will feel exciting, but every day still counts. Discipline begins with clarity. When you know exactly what you want and why you want it, you reduce the chances of quitting when things get hard. Motivation often comes from emotion, inspiration, excitement, or fear. Discipline, however, comes from principle. It is rooted in values and long-term vision. When you decide that growth is not optional but necessary, your behavior changes. You stop negotiating with distractions. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. Instead, you operate from a standard. This is what I do, no matter what. That mindset transforms improvement from a temporary burst into a lifestyle. Another reason discipline is essential is because it builds structure. Motivation may push you to act once, but discipline builds routines. Routines remove the need to make constant decisions. When your habits are structured, a set time to read, exercise, reflect, or plan, you don't rely on emotional energy to get started. You simply follow the system you've created. Systems are powerful because they reduce friction. They make improvement automatic. Over time, what once required effort becomes normal. Discipline turns difficult tasks into familiar behaviors. Discipline also strengthens your mental toughness. Every time you act despite resistance, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than your excuses. Each disciplined choice, waking up early, completing a task, finishing what you started, sends a message to your mind, I am in control. That message builds confidence. Confidence born from discipline is deeper than confidence born from praise. It is not dependent on external validation. It is built from internal consistency. You trust yourself because you have evidence that you follow through. Furthermore, discipline protects you from temporary setbacks. Motivation can disappear the moment you fail or face criticism. If you rely solely on emotional excitement, one disappointment may cause you to stop entirely. Discipline, however, keeps you steady. It reminds you that failure is part of growth, not a reason to quit. When improvement becomes a daily commitment, rather than a mood-driven activity, setbacks lose their power. You understand that one bad day does not erase progress. You simply return to the habit and continue. Finally, discipline reshapes your identity. The more consistently you act with discipline, the more you see yourself as a disciplined person. Identity drives behavior. When you believe you are someone who shows up, you begin to show up naturally. When you see yourself as someone who honors commitments, you stop breaking promises to yourself. That internal shift is powerful because it moves improvement from external pressure to internal alignment. You are no longer trying to force change. You are living in alignment with who you have decided to become. And that is how 1% daily improvement becomes not just an action, but a way of life. In a world that celebrates applause, followers, trophies, and recognition, it is easy to forget that every visible success has an invisible beginning. Public achievement is only the surface. Beneath it lies a long season of private effort, quiet mornings, disciplined evenings, repeated failures, and unseen persistence. If you commit to improving 1% every day, most of that improvement will happen where no one is watching. And that is exactly how it should be. Private growth builds the foundation that public success stands on. Without that foundation, recognition is fragile and short-lived. The challenge with private growth is that it requires patience. When no one claps for your early progress, it is tempting to question whether your efforts matter. You may practice a skill for months before anyone notices. You may work on your mindset for years before others see a visible change in your results. But growth does not need an audience to be real. The habits you build in solitude strengthen your character. The discipline you develop behind closed doors prepares you for opportunities you have not yet seen. When you focus on becoming better rather than being seen, your improvement becomes authentic and sustainable. Private growth also protects you from performing for approval. When your focus is on external validation, your actions may shift depending on what impresses others. But when your improvement happens quietly, it is driven by purpose rather than praise. You read because you value knowledge, not because someone is watching. You train because you value strength, not because someone is filming. You reflect because you value clarity, not because it looks productive. This internal motivation makes your progress more stable. It frees you from comparison and keeps your energy centered on your own path. Another powerful aspect of private growth is resilience. In private, you face your weaknesses honestly. There is no need to pretend. You can admit where you struggle, identify your flaws, and work on them without fear of judgment. This honesty accelerates improvement. When you are not trying to maintain an image, you are free to experiment, fail, adjust, and try again. Failure in private becomes a tool rather than a threat. Each mistake teaches you something valuable, strengthening you long before success becomes visible to others. Private growth also develops humility. When you know how much work went into your progress, you are less likely to become arrogant when recognition arrives. You understand the sacrifices, the discipline, and the setbacks that shaped your journey. That understanding keeps you grounded. Humility is powerful because it allows continued growth. The moment you believe you have arrived, improvement stops. But when you remember the private grind that brought you forward, you remain open to learning and evolving. Most importantly, private growth prepares you for responsibility. Success amplifies who you already are. If your character is weak, success exposes it. If your discipline is inconsistent, success magnifies the cracks. But if you have spent years refining yourself in private, strengthening your mindset, sharpening your skills, and aligning your values, then success becomes a platform you are ready to stand on. The 1% improvements you commit to daily may feel insignificant now, but they are shaping a version of you capable of handling greater opportunities. By honoring private growth, you ensure that when public success arrives, it is not overwhelming. It is earned, supported, and sustained by the work no one else ever saw. One of the most overlooked aspects of self-improvement is the relationship you have with yourself. Every time you set a goal, make a plan, or declare an intention, you are making a promise. And every time you fail to follow through, even on something small, you weaken that relationship. Improving 1% every day is not just about skills or habits. It is about integrity with yourself. When you consistently keep the promises you make, you build self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence, discipline, and long-term growth. Most people think confidence comes from external success, awards, recognition, praise. But real confidence comes from evidence. It comes from knowing that when you say you will do something, you actually do it. If you tell yourself you will wake up at 6 a.m., and you do, that is a win. If you commit to reading 10 pages and you complete them, that is a win. These may seem small, but they send a powerful message to your mind. I can rely on myself. Over time, these small kept promises strengthen your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who starts and quits. You begin to see yourself as someone who finishes. Breaking promises to yourself, on the other hand, creates internal doubt. Each time you delay, excuse, or abandon your commitment, a quiet voice begins to question your reliability. That doubt affects more than just one habit. It influences how you approach opportunities, challenges, and risks. When you do not trust yourself, you hesitate, you second guess your abilities. You limit your potential because you are unsure if you will follow through. The solution is not perfection, it is consistency. Even if your commitment is small, honor it. A small promise kept is more powerful than a big promise broken. Keeping promises to yourself also builds discipline naturally. When you treat your word as valuable, even when no one else hears it, you develop a standard of personal integrity. That standard becomes a guiding force. You begin to make realistic commitments instead of exaggerated ones. You become thoughtful about what you agree to, knowing you intend to follow through. This reduces overwhelm and increases focus. Instead of chasing every goal at once, you concentrate on what truly matters and give it your consistent effort. Another powerful effect of self-trust is emotional stability. When you know you are dependable, setbacks feel less threatening. Even if a plan fails, you trust your ability to adjust and continue. You understand that progress is not about never making mistakes. It is about returning to your commitments quickly. Each time you fall short but choose to recommit, you reinforce resilience. You prove that your dedication is stronger than temporary failure. That resilience is essential for long-term growth because improvement rarely follows a straight line. Ultimately, keeping promises to yourself shapes your character. It defines who you are when no one is watching. It strengthens your inner voice so that it becomes supportive instead of critical. The more evidence you gather of your own reliability, the stronger your belief becomes. And belief influences action. When you believe in yourself, you take bigger steps. You embrace greater challenges. You hold yourself to higher standards. The daily practice of honoring your word, even in small ways, transforms improvement from a task into a personal commitment rooted in integrity. Growth does not live in comfort. Comfort is predictable, familiar, and safe, but it is also limiting. When you operate only within what feels easy, you repeat the same patterns and produce the same results. Improving yourself 1% every day requires stepping slightly beyond what feels natural. It requires choosing the harder conversation, the extra repetition, the earlier alarm, the deeper self-reflection. Discomfort is not a sign that you are failing. It is a signal that you are expanding. The moment something feels challenging is often the moment it is shaping you the most. Many people avoid discomfort because it triggers fear of failure, embarrassment, rejection, or judgment. But avoidance keeps you stuck. When you lean into discomfort intentionally, you retrain your mind. You begin to see difficulty not as a threat, but as training. The nervousness before speaking up becomes practice for courage. The fatigue during a workout becomes proof that your body is adapting. The frustration of learning something new becomes evidence that your brain is stretching. Each uncomfortable moment, when faced instead of avoided, strengthens your capacity. Being comfortable with discomfort also builds resilience. Life will not always present you with ideal conditions. There will be uncertainty, criticism, and unexpected obstacles. If you only function well when everything feels smooth, you will struggle the moment pressure appears. But when you regularly challenge yourself, even in small ways, you become adaptable. You learn that discomfort is temporary. You learn that emotions rise and fall. You learn that you can survive awkwardness, difficulty, and doubt. That understanding reduces fear and increases confidence in your ability to handle whatever comes next. Another powerful benefit of embracing discomfort is expanded opportunity. Many doors open only after you step into unfamiliar territory. Applying for a competitive position, starting a new project, initiating a conversation, or learning a difficult skill all require courage. Each time you say yes to something slightly intimidating, your world becomes larger, your skills expand, your network grows, your perspective deepens. What once felt impossible gradually becomes manageable. The edge of your comfort zone shifts outward, and with it, your potential. Discomfort also sharpens discipline. When you act despite resistance, you strengthen self-control. You prove that feelings do not dictate your behavior. This is crucial for 1% daily improvement because some days will feel inconvenient or exhausting. Choosing growth anyway builds mental toughness. Over time, tasks that once felt uncomfortable begin to feel normal. The discipline you develop in difficult moments carries into every area of your life. Work, relationships, health, and personal goals. You become someone who does not retreat when things get challenging. Most importantly, getting comfortable with discomfort changes your relationship with fear. Fear loses its authority when you face it regularly. You realize that discomfort is rarely as overwhelming as it first appears. You begin to trust your ability to move forward even while uncertain. That trust fuels courage, and courage fuels progress. By intentionally stepping into small, manageable challenges each day, you condition yourself for larger breakthroughs in the future. Growth then becomes less about waiting for confidence and more about building it through repeated acts of bravery, one uncomfortable step at a time. Consistency is the quiet force that turns effort into transformation. A single action, no matter how powerful, cannot change your life on its own, but repeated actions, even small ones, create momentum that builds over time. When you commit to improving 1% every day, you are not relying on intensity, you are relying on repetition. And repetition is where the magic happens. Just like interest compounds in a bank account, your habits compound in your life. Each disciplined action builds upon the last, creating results far greater than the individual effort ever could. The power of consistency lies in accumulation. One workout may not transform your body. One focused study session may not guarantee mastery. One day of positive thinking may not eliminate doubt. But when those actions are repeated daily, they begin to stack, muscles strengthen gradually, knowledge deepens steadily. Mindsets shift quietly. Because the changes are subtle at first, many people quit too early. They mistake slow progress for no progress. Yet consistency is working beneath the surface, building foundations that will eventually support visible growth. Consistency also builds identity. When you act in alignment with your goals repeatedly, you stop seeing those actions as tasks and start seeing them as part of who you are. You are no longer someone trying to be disciplined. You are someone who practices discipline daily. You are no longer someone hoping to grow. You are someone who grows consistently. Identity is powerful because it influences behavior automatically. When improvement becomes part of how you define yourself, showing up each day feels natural rather than forced. Another important aspect of consistency is reliability. When you are consistent, you reduce chaos in your life. You know what to expect from yourself. You create stability in your routines. That stability frees up mental energy for creativity and deeper focus. Instead of constantly restarting after long breaks, you maintain steady progress. Even on difficult days, you preserve the habit by doing something small. That preservation matters. It keeps the chain unbroken and protects the momentum you have built. Consistency also strengthens patience. In a world obsessed with instant results, the ability to persist without immediate reward is rare and valuable. When you commit to daily improvement, you accept that meaningful change takes time. You stop chasing shortcuts. You stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. Instead, you measure success by your adherence to the process. This patience prevents burnout and builds endurance. It allows you to stay committed long enough for the compound effect to reveal itself. Most importantly, consistency multiplies belief. Each day you show up reinforces the idea that you are capable of long-term commitment. That belief becomes unshakable over time. You trust the process because you have experienced its results. You understand that even small efforts matter when repeated faithfully. And as the days turn into weeks and the weeks into years, the compounded impact of your consistent 1% improvements creates a version of you that once seemed distant, not because of dramatic change in a single moment, but because of steady dedication that never stopped building. And when you look back 1 year from now, you won't remember the excuses you almost made. You won't remember the comfort you almost chose. You won't remember the days you felt tired. You will remember that you decided. You decided that average was no longer acceptable. You decided that small steps were still steps. You decided that your future deserved effort every single day. Because 1% is not small when it's repeated. It's not weak when it's consistent. It's not invisible when it compounds. One disciplined decision becomes a habit. One habit becomes a lifestyle. One lifestyle becomes a legacy. So don't wait for a perfect moment. Don't wait for applause. Don't wait for motivation to knock on your door. Start with one action, one improvement, one promise kept, and tomorrow do it again. That is how you rise. That is how you transform. That is how you build a life that speaks for itself.